Good morning, everybody. Welcome to From the Deep End. I'm Jonathan Jenkins. Always glad to be here with you as we open our Bibles and study them together. We're going to be in Galatians chapter 4. We're going to try and wrap up that chapter today because I'm heading to polishing the pulpit, leaving out of here Thursday morning, and be gone. Obviously, not for no class Thursday, and then pretty much the next week too. I know we'll be gone Tuesday. And I think Julie and I are still kind of figuring out exactly when we're going to be getting back. Probably not in time for class next Thursday either. So we're about to miss 3 classes, I think. Maybe 2. Probably 3, though. So anyway, just keep that in mind. See some people coming in there. Shauna says safe travels to polishing. Thank you to Shauna. David, good to see you. Tammy. Arlene, good to have you all in the class this morning. Just go ahead, and if you want to, go ahead and put some comments in there. I at least try to look at them. I don't always get to them immediately when they're coming up. Sometimes I'm in the middle of a thought. It takes me a while to get back to them, but I do appreciate them. It's helpful when y'all go ahead and put those in. I do need to say this also by way of introduction about the polishing the pulpit trip. Julie was in her van this morning because she's on the way to her. She's getting a new neurologist today to help her with her autoimmune condition that she has, myasthenia gravis. If you want to know what it is, that's what she has. But she said the AC is not working right in her van. So that needs to get fixed. And it's midday on Tuesday. We leave out Thursday morning. So that has to get dropped off at the shop now. Like now, it needs to get dropped off at the shop because I'm not driving all the way to Tennessee. If that can't get fixed, there will be a car rented before before Thursday. We're not driving all the way to Sevierville, Tennessee with the AC not working in the van. That will not be happening. So I say that to say this. At some point, when she's done with her appointment and she's dropping that thing off at the mechanic shop, this little thing over here is going to buzz at me. And that's going to be her dropping the van off at the mechanic shop. That will be officially the time the class ends. Okay? That's when the class will end, is when that happens. We'll see when that is. But that it may be early is what I'm saying. We may be getting out of here a little bit early today because as much as I enjoy teaching this class, as much as I enjoy spending my time with y'all, taking care of Julie, and having an AC that works on a 10-day, 1,000-mile trip, that kind of that's higher on my priority list right now than making sure we run all the way to the end of class today. So anyway, just wanted to give you a little heads up on that. We'll see what happens when it happens. But anyway, let's go ahead and get rolling today. Where is my stuff? There it is. Okay. So as I said, we are still here in hey, there's Pat LeBlanc. Pat, don't normally see you. Good to see you, Pat. Good to have you in the class. Good deal. All right. We have been in this little section here for a couple of weeks now, probably. And I was very confident about 3 or 4 classes ago that I would have this finished before PTP popped up and we would be done with this section. And then I went off on a couple of different diatribes as I've been known to do. However, I still think we'll have a reasonably good chance of finishing this up because I hope you have at least heard and can remember parts of the things we've been talking about in this section. Because with that in the background, the outlay of this text is pretty easy to see. It is the point that Paul is making here to his original audience, to the ones he just describes there in verse number 21, those who desire to be under the law. So to the Judaizers, that's who he's talking about. Okay, this is a direct assault at the Judaizing teachers. And he then turns around and somewhat a little bit of a condescension here. He asked them, "Do you not listen to the law?" Okay, the very law that you're teaching, the what you're trying to tell the Gentiles in Galatia that they need to do, and some Jews, by the way, too. But the very thing you're trying to tell them, if you would just read your Old Testament law, you'd know you were wrong about this. Okay. Now that's critical to get, and that's kind of part of what we were talking about for the last 2 or 3 classes on this topic. Just another Bible study tip that you've heard me say 100 times already. When you're reading through the writings of Paul, pretty well just assume, know that you are assuming it, but pretty well just assume that what he's writing about is Judaizing teachers. Okay, that's pretty much what he's always writing about, especially if he is arguing against somebody, like the entire book of Romans and Galatians and Ephesians and Colossians. At least those. Okay. Surprisingly heavy in Philippians too, by the way. We kind of skip over it in Philippians, but it's in Philippians too. That's who he's writing against. And that's exactly who he's writing against right here. And that's important. Okay. We spent a good deal of time looking at this according to the flesh, and this down here according to the Spirit. According to the flesh, I'll say it one more time today, which makes it the 394th time I've said it in this class. According to the flesh, in your Bible, is not depravity. Okay? When it's used in this couplet, according to the flesh and according to the Spirit, that, first of all, that happens almost exclusively in the writings of Paul. It does happen exclusively in Jewish context, because effectively the only other time you'll find it in any kind of repetition is John 3 when Jesus is talking to Nicodemus. Okay? It's almost exclusively a Pauline construct, and he's dealing with Judaizing teachers. According to the flesh is dealing with the Judaistic, Pharisaical way of trying to be perfect before God. Okay, and the foundational flaw, as we have talked about at some length, the foundational flaw rather, in the way that the Judaizers dealt with their trying to be made perfect, which Galatians 3 is done according to the flesh, the foundational problem that these Judaizers had, those who desired to be under the law, is that they pursued the law of Moses as if it were based on works. Okay, that means they were trying to be made perfect. They were trying to be holy, trying to be not the publicans and the sinners, trying to be the elite, the people that could go into the temple and pray. I'm glad I'm not like that publican over there. That's who they were. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I've got. I give alms. They do all that. That was their mentality. All right? As if it were based on works, which it wasn't. The law of Moses was not based on works. Now, that's important to bring it forward into a modern construct, because nearly every version of modern theology, even prominently inside churches of Christ, that addresses the Old Testament law, the law of Moses, as if it were based upon their obedience and so on. It is no more nor no less based upon one's ability to obey God than is the gospel. Okay? They did not pursue, they failed to reach the law because they did not pursue it by faith. That's why these Judaizers messed up the law. They did not pursue it as if it were, which it was, a system of faith. They pursued it as if it were a system of works. Okay, that's the Pauline construct. Flesh, spirit, faith, works. That's not two different topics. It's exactly the same topic. Okay, let me show you the third topic. All right, go back here to Galatians 4 again. Third topic is that this, according to the flesh mentality, leads to slavery. Okay? But the Jerusalem, the Jerusalem that is above is free. It leads to freedom. We'll talk about that more in just a moment. Okay? But flesh, spirit, faith, works. I need a third hand. I don't have enough hands. Let's do it this way. Flesh, spirit, faith, works, freedom, slavery. Okay? Whenever you read that terminology in Paul's writings, it's all the same thing. It's one topic. In every encounter I know of it in the text, it is one topic. And you know what that topic is? I just told you a minute ago. When you're studying Paul, just assume he's writing about Judaizers. That's the topic. Every single time it comes up, particularly if you have that any combination of those couplets in the same context, that's what it's talking about. Just is. He's writing about the Judaizers. Okay, and you're dealing here with cause and effect. Okay, cause. I'm going to live internally, externally. That's flesh, spirit. Okay, and by the way, as we've talked about at length, ESV puts a capital S on that word spirit there, and everybody reads it as if that's the Holy Spirit. It is not. Okay? You make a choice. I'm going to live by flesh, being made perfect by the flesh, or I'm going to live by spirit. I'm going to live by my heart, mind, soul, which is exactly the greatest commandment of the Old Testament law. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, your soul. That's where you go, with your spirit. That's how you do it. Or you can live it by the flesh. You can tithe, just to show you the passage I want. Where is it? Matthew 23. Okay. Matthew 23. Verse 23. You Pharisees, this is your Pharisaical way of living. You tithe of mint and dill and cumin. Okay, there's your external. There's your works-based. Okay? But you have neglected the weightier matters of the law. The weightier matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. It's flesh, spirit. Okay? It's flesh, spirit. Tithe of mint and dill and cumin. Okay, great. Which you should. These things you ought to do because they're in the law. But they treated that as if I have now accomplished the law. Okay, it's just like IRS sends you a letter. I pay my taxes to the IRS. Bang. IRS, by the way, if the IRS is sending you a letter, it's almost never a good thing. But bang, I paid my taxes. All right, bang. But I did that by obedience to a rote and so on, so that I could stop getting those nasty letters. Okay, that's what the Pharisees were doing. They were trying to be made perfect by the flesh. Not depravity. They're trying to be made perfect by the flesh. I'm better at this than you are. I tithe of every little herb and spice that's in my cabinets. I tithe of every little thing. Okay? However, to live a life which is characterized by justice and mercy and faithfulness, guess what you have to do then? You're not just following rote. You're not just following code. What are you doing? Well, you are being transformed. How? How are you transformed? Oh, I don't know. How about by the renewing of your mind? Romans 12. It's all the same topic. It's all the same topic. So, flesh, spirit, lowercase s, your spirit, your mind, your heart, your soul. Greatest commandment of the law of Moses, frankly, the greatest commandment of the gospel. There it is. Your spirit. Galatians 3, having begun in the spirit. Okay, once again, make that s lowercase. You were pricked in the heart when you heard the gospel. Acts 2:37. You lived by spirit. Are you now being made perfect by the flesh? Flesh. Flesh. Spirit. Who lived according to the flesh? Pharisees. Okay? Flesh, spirit. That's your beginning point. What's that result in? Well, that results then in a life of faith and works. If you live according to the flesh, guess what you end up doing? You live a life which is now being judged by your works. Because I'm trying to live according to the flesh, and that's exactly how the Pharisees ended up. When the Pharisees stood in the temple, is that 18 or 19? There it is, 18:9. When the Pharisees stood in the temple by the parable of Jesus, there's a Pharisee. He's in the temple. And he says, I thank you that I'm not like this tax collector over here. I fast twice a week and give tithes of all that I get. Mint, dill, and cumin would be among those things. See, he was living according to the flesh. And when he evaluated living according to the flesh, guess what he relied upon? He relied upon the continuity and the consistency of his works. He evaluated himself higher than that publican over there because he thought his works were better than the publican. When you live according to the flesh, you rely on works. Okay, let me show it to you again. For all who rely on the works of the law. See, that very statement, and I don't remember what we said about it when we were way back, that was 3 or 4 months ago probably. I don't remember what we said exactly about that verse, but all who rely on the works of the law, the mainstream prevailing view of that verse would be that was everybody who was under the law. Everybody under the law of Moses was under a curse because that's what the law required of you, which is not what Romans 9 says. Romans 9 says it was by faith that you lived under the law. So does Hebrews 11. Over and over and over and over and over and over again, Hebrews 11 makes that point. Who relies on the works of the law? Oh, I don't know. How about that Pharisee that was in the temple praying? I tithe of everything that I get. He's living according to the flesh, which is exactly what Paul says right here. He was trying to be made perfect by the flesh. Okay? Cause. Cause is your worldview. Cause is your paradigm. Spirit or flesh. Once you have your worldview, once you have your paradigm established, you're then going to be looking at the means by which you try to accomplish it. You're either going to try and accomplish it by faith or you're going to try to accomplish it by works. Okay? How many of y'all in the audience today are married? Okay, I've been married, about to be 37 years I've been married. Okay? The relationship that Julie and I have is not based upon works. It's not. That's not the way a long-term, healthy relationship operates. Because we do not wake up every morning trying to evaluate how the other partner. I don't wake up trying to evaluate how Julie has been performing in her in doing her chores or whatever, and she does not do that to me. Right? You know what it's based upon? The biblical term for what our relationship, and any of you in long-term relationships and marriages, you know exactly what it's based upon. The biblical word would be faith. Or how about this? The biblical term would be faith working through love, coming up in chapter 5. See, that's the basis of the relationship. Faith through love. But guess what the faith through love does? Oh, it works. Because, yeah, it does matter. Even though we've known each other since we were 9 years of age, and no, we ain't got no secrets. We know each other's secrets backwards and forwards. We met at 9. Guess what? If somehow I just decided to stop doing all the things I do as a part of our relationship, eventually that would have a problem. Now, if I fail occasionally, which I do, If I mess up occasionally, if I just forget, whatever, okay. Because the relationship is based on faith through love, guess what? Julie doesn't hold a ledger and start counting that against me and so on because she knows, oh, yeah, I've met him before. I've met my husband before. And I do the same for her. But you know what? You do reach a point where if that faith through love is no longer working, it's going to impact the relationship. But the working and your proficiency at working is not the basis of the relationship. When it is through faith, and faith comes by a commitment of the heart, mind, soul, spirit. That's where it comes from. People, this is not hard. The manner in which you maintain that relationship with your spouse, with your kids, with your parents, whatever it be, it's the exact same process by which you maintain the relationship with God. Now, if you don't do that, if you try to make this about flesh, according to the flesh, I'm gonna obey every rule. And so therefore it's based, then I evaluate the state of my relationship based upon works. You know what the end result of that is? The end result of that is bondage, corruption, or slavery. Those are the terms Paul uses repeatedly. Bondage, slavery, or corruption. Okay, that's exactly what he will say down here in chapter 6. The one who sows to his own flesh will from the flesh reap corruption. Okay, sowing to the flesh is not leading down a path of hedonism. Sowing to the flesh is trying to be made perfect. I'm going to tithe of all the mint and dill and cumin that I can. I'm going to do that. I'm going to fast twice a week, which not even in the law. And I'm going to do all of that. I'm going to listen to every rabbinical law. I'm going to go over that passage we keep using back in Mark 7. I'm going to keep all the traditions of the elders and so on and so forth and so on. Here's the problem. When I start doing that, guess what? All of that being done, all of these regulations, all of these rules, all of these works that I'm relying on the works of the law says I'm under a curse. Why am I under a curse? Because I have to keep the whole law. And that means I cannot handle, I cannot taste, and I cannot touch. And since that's what I am relying on, I'm not relying on faith. I'm not relying on my spirit. I'm relying on my proficiency at being a rule keeper. I'm not going to handle, I'm not going to taste, I'm not going to touch. The problem is, since I didn't actually deal with the heart problem, it's of no value in stopping me from being engaged in the indulgences of the flesh. And since the stopping those things is the basis of my own self-worth, guess what I end up being? Guess what the end result is? The end result is, if I continue to live that way, I come to this conclusion. The conclusion is, but I'm just of the flesh. I'm sold under sin. I know that nothing good dwells in me that is in my flesh. I've tried to discipline that. I've tried to not handle, not taste, not touch. I've tried to do all of those things. And I can't do it. So guess what I end up thinking about myself? Well, I either become a hypocrite, which is what some Pharisees did. And I just start making up stuff as Jesus says about them in Matthew 23. You lay all these heavy burdens on other people, but you don't do them yourselves. So I just end up a flat out hypocrite. Okay, that's one path. And that, frankly, is the only path that allows you to be happy. Okay, you still have all your mint and your dill and your cumin. You're doing all your tithes. Okay, done. Okay, that's off my checklist. It's just like I said with the IRS earlier. Okay, I got my bills paid. I got my taxes paid. Got my taxes paid. But I'm doing everything I possibly can not to pay taxes. I'm pushing what the legal limits every year to try and diminish that, because my heart, my mind, my soul, my spirit doesn't actually want to do that. It has to, because I'm following the rules, but it doesn't want to. So the way that I do it is, boy, let's say I work for a living, and I got the work that I do when I ran my business. Okay, I still technically own the business. The kids run it now. But when I had my pool company, when I was running my own pool company, okay, you know what sometimes people will do? Because when they pay their monthly bill every month, it goes through a credit card, usually, sometimes a check, but usually a credit card. And lo and behold, you have a record of it. Every now and again, somebody will slip you some cash. And now there's no record of it. Real easy. See, that's what you just became a hypocrite. That's what happens is you just became a hypocrite. That's one way of dealing with it. The other way of dealing with it is not to be a hypocrite. But you're still evaluating yourself based upon the flesh. And you realize that, wait a minute, I keep messing up because all the rules and regulations, Colossians 2, no value, zero, no value in stopping the flesh. So the conclusion I come to after I've done this for a while and I find out how bad I am at it is that I'm just a wretched man. I'm the problem. I'm worthless. So guess what you end up in? What you end up in, back up in chapter 6 of Romans, is you end up becoming a slave of sin. Why? Because you are talking in human terms and because of the natural limitations you're going through. What are those natural limitations based upon? Those natural limitations are based upon, ta-da, as we've talked about ad length, the elementary principles of the world. This is the foundational principle of how the world works. Spiritual things, governmental things, relational things, every aspect of life, every aspect of relationship life at least, has this same foundation. To live according to the flesh, to try to be made perfect by the flesh, is the elementary principle of the world. A lot of marriages, a lot of jobs, a lot of schooling, dealing with the IRS, a lot of religion, even idolatry religion. It's founded on the idea that I am going to rely on the works of whatever law I'm supposed to be following. The point of all of that, to get us back here to chapter 4, the point of all of that is just this. Every single time you come across this, if you try to live according to the flesh, you will either become a flat-out hypocrite, Luke chapter 18, Matthew chapter 23, Mark chapter 7, or you will become a wretched man who believes in your own futility, Romans 8, interesting by the way, Romans 8, Romans 6, all of Romans 7. That's the path you're going to go down. Now, in Galatians 4 and in all of the rest of the writings of Paul, frankly, the entirety of the New Testament, every single time you come across this kind of phraseology, he's talking to the Judaizers. And the Judaistic doctrine is always according to the flesh. It is always based upon the elementary principle of the world. And every single time it is tried, scroll back down to chapter 6. Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that will he also reap. It's amazing how often we quote that verse and we don't read the next verse. Look at the first word, for. For. Paul gives you two options. You're either going to be living a life sowing to your own flesh, or you're going to be leading a life sowing to the Spirit. And by the way, lowercase s. Lowercase s. You've got two options. You can sow to your flesh or you can sow to your spirit. You can either try to be made perfect by the flesh, or having begun in the Spirit, you can have that inner man renewed day by day by the renewing of the mind. Corinthians and Romans, just lump those together. Those are your options. Every single time you sow to the flesh, if what you were trying to do is to make perfect the flesh, okay? If that's what you're trying to do, you will, every single time it's done, reap corruption. You will either become a hypocrite, that's corrupt, or you will become one who believes he's a wretched man. That's corrupt. That's bondage. That's slavery. If you sow to your spirit, you're trying to be having the inner man renewed day by day. That's what you're trying to do. By the renewing of the mind. That's what you're trying to do. Guess what that will produce? Every single time. Eternal life. Ta-da! This is not hard. All right, so back up here. You who desire to be under the law, you who desire to be made perfect by the flesh, who rely on your ability to do the works of the law, who rely on it's that system of works as if the law were based on works, you Judaizers, do you not listen to the law? For it is written that Abraham had two sons, one by a slave woman, one by a free woman. There's your contrast, slave and free. Okay? Faith and works, flesh and spirit, slave and free. But the son of the slave woman was born according to the flesh. Now, again, we spent a long time talking about that. I think an entire day talking about Genesis 15, where Abraham tries to get Eliezer in the mix. God says, nope. Then Sarah turns around, tries to get Hagar in the mix. God effectively says, nope. Okay? They were not trying to be depraved. Abraham offering Eliezer to God is according to the flesh. Sarah offering Hagar, well, to Abraham, is according to the flesh. They were trying to help God out. That was the point of that class. They were not trying to live hedonistic, sensual lifestyles. They were trying to help God out. Kind of like the Pharisees. Because that's the elemental principle of the world. Okay? While the son of the free woman was born through promise. Born through promise. See, I told Julie before before we started the class, that just give me a text. I'll come pick you up at the shop. If I need to stop the class early, I'll stop the class early. I'll come pick you up. You see, that's a promise. That's a promise. So she's going to take actions today after her doctor's appointment to take the car over to the shop based upon promise. Guess what she has to do then? Well, she has to have faith in my promise. Sarah says to Abraham, take Hagar. See, that's not faith. That is a lack of faith. God has said it for 10 years. You will have an heir. Sarah looks at it and goes, no, it's not going to work. She did not at that point have faith. She was not yet ready to accept. In fact, she laughs at it later on. But at some point, God says to them, a year from now, Sarah will have a child. And we've talked about this in those classes. Guess what had to happen? Roughly 3 months from the point that God made that statement, Abraham and Sarah had to go have physical relations with each other. They took actions, lo and behold, works. They did things based upon faith. Faith not based upon according to the flesh. We're going to work around and get either Eliezer or Hagar involved. No. They took actions. They did works. And I'm pretty sure they had to do a work. I'm pretty sure that's the way this works. But they did it based upon a promise. Now, they had no reason to do that from a physical standpoint. At least not to try and have a child. I mean, they've been married a long time. I'm assuming they still liked each other. But to go in at that 3-month mark and have that intimate evening together to make sure Sarah conceived a child, that had to happen for no works flesh-based reason, because they had already been married for decades and nothing had ever happened. But it had to happen then. Two people nearly a century old had to go do that. Works. Oh, that's almost like faith working by love. Works and faith. Oh, see, that's by love. That's by spirit, by heart, by mind, by promise. You see the connection? Okay, that's the connection. Now, this may be interpreted allegorically. Okay, so Paul starts with a basic truth. Your concept of according to the flesh didn't work. Okay, that is, again, not depravity. That's Judaizers. The same people he says about in chapter 9 of the book of Romans, you follow the law of God as if it were based on works, which is exactly what Abraham and Sarah were trying to do. Now he's making the allegorical point, because they cannot argue with this. The Judaizers cannot argue with verses 21, 22, 23. Cannot argue with it. It's factual. Frankly, they desire to be under the law. That's the whole point of Judaistic theology. They can't argue with that. Okay? Now he's going to make the application point of it, and he says it is allegorically. Can be interpreted allegorically. Okay? These women are two covenants. One is from Mount Sinai, bearing children for slavery. She is Hagar. Now, Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia, which corresponds to the present Jerusalem, for she is in slavery with her children. Okay, there's the first part. Present Jerusalem. Present Jerusalem is in slavery with her children. Not past Jerusalem. Present Jerusalem. In roughly AD, wherever you want to put the dating of Galatians, rather, we've had that conversation. Let's put it about AD 60. That might be a little late, but let's put it in AD 60. Okay, you want to back that up somewhere in the 50s, go ahead. 20, 25, 30 years after the church was established. I mean, obviously we're dealing with the church in Galatia, so we got to get past Acts 13, Acts 14. We got to get into after the Cornelius and the Gentiles are brought in. I'd argue probably after Acts 15. Why is present Jerusalem under slavery? With her children. See, it's two covenants. It's two covenants. Two. Present Jerusalem versus what we're about to see is the Jerusalem that is above. Present Jerusalem. Did you hear somebody say recently that whenever you're reading the writings of the Apostle Paul, just assume that what he's talking about is Judaistic theology? Because this present Jerusalem has enslaved her children. So the covenant is from Sinai in Arabia. That would be the law of Moses. It corresponds, I like that choice of words there, it corresponds in this allegory to the present Jerusalem. And it leads to slavery. Let me help you here. We're not going to take the full time to do it today, but you really want to have a fun time with this study? Let me do this. Let me bring up our commentary set. I don't know what he says here. Let's just see what he says about verses 24 and 25. Okay? First two covenants, the Mosaic had its origin in Mount Sinai. Those under this legal covenant were slaves. Okay? At this point, the reader is expected to understand and supply the implicit reference to the Abrahamic covenant, the gracious system represented by Sarah through the Messianic promise who were brought forth, and so on and so forth. Okay? Two Jerusalems. Hagar also stood for the first century city of Jerusalem, a city enslaved to Rome and in slavery to law. This is the heavenly city will one day come down to earth, and so on and so forth. He's about to get premillennial there, okay? It doesn't do as much as I thought he would, but here's the sentence that matters. Those under this legal covenant were slaves. Okay, again, that's the kind of the prominent evangelical view. All right, and as we've looked at this commentary, this evangelical commentary throughout our study of Galatians, he keeps doing the same thing. This is the nominative, as another word, normal, how about that way, state of the law of Moses. It was inherently and pre-planned as being a legalistic system, and legalistic systems bring about slavery. That's the point he's getting to. That's what he wants to. Okay? So here's the fun thing I want you to have in the study. Since nearly every commentary that you're going to read is going to do something with that. And by the way, that's going to be inside Churches of Christ as well. You're going to read something on Galatians 4 right here. The present Jerusalem is in slavery with her children. There will be some discussion of the Old Testament law. Could you do something for me? Could you go back, start in Exodus 20, giving of the Ten Commandments? Or how about this? Go through the book of Deuteronomy. Maybe no place better than the book of Deuteronomy, because it's 34 chapters, and it's Moses giving every detail about the law of Moses. Or try randomly put your finger down in Leviticus. That works too. Could you please tell me where in those books the concept of you're in slavery to me enters? Where does God tell the nation of Israel? You know, that nation that he chose out among all the other nations, not because you were great, but because you were the least. That nation that he says, there will be no poor among you. That nation that he says, I won't add to you any of the diseases of Egypt. That nation that he tells them, when you come in, you're going to eat in vineyards you didn't plant. You're going to live in houses you didn't build. You know, that nation. That nation that when they entered the promised land, they took down its most mighty city of Jericho with 7 days worth of just walking around a wall. You know, that nation. That nation that had been a whole nation of slaves. Here's what happened. They were a nation of slaves in Egypt. God brought them out, watched them across the Red Sea, and put them right in front of Mount Sinai to give them a law that just made them slaves again. At some point, you're going to have to deal with that. If that's your interpretation of this text, you got a problem. You got a problem. Because that's just simply not true about the nature of the law. God created. He even refers to them. Where's the reference? He even refers to them as a kingdom of priests. I don't know where that reference is. That's not a made-up verse. That verse does exist, and it's not just the statement in Revelation about us. That verse exists. Where is it? I don't know. I'll have to look it up later. But he even calls that. They're free. Go read Deuteronomy. Now, if they abandon God, read Deuteronomy. Yeah, lots of stuff happens. You really want to understand where Israel stands? Get to Deuteronomy 30. You read Deuteronomy 30. That is not a good chapter. That is not a good. They became slaves, not in Israel, No, read Deuteronomy 30. They absolutely would become slaves. And it turns out they became slaves again to, well, read the book of Judges, start randomly, put your finger down on a mark. That happened. And then obviously to Assyria, and then to Babylon, and then to Persia, and so on down the line. Yeah, that did happen. Because the law told them that would happen. Not when they followed God, though. Not when they loved the Lord, the God of all our heart, soul. Not when they did that. When they did that, there was no poor, there was no food, there was no hunger. Rather, there was no diseases being added, blessings, and so on. Early, latter rains would come, so on and so forth. If your construct is the present Jerusalem is the Old Testament law, the legal, as our commentary just said, legal covenant, they were slaves. Please establish that for me. You notice there's no verse listed here? When he talks about the heavenly Jerusalem, the one that's from above, lo and behold, he pops in a couple of verses right there. He got no verses right here. You know why? Because he can't. That's just not true. So why does Paul say it? If it's not true, why does he say it? Because the two Jerusalems, he takes it to be quite literal in an allegorical statement. There's a reason he does that, by the way. I'm not sure we'll get into that today because that's off topic. But the reason this has to be literal cities of Jerusalem in the middle of an allegory that Paul just said, this is an allegory. The reason it has to be is because he wants the first century city of Jerusalem. It has to go away, and it does. But the heavenly city, which one day will come down to earth, that's premillennial. I don't know this commentator is eschatological views, but I would just about write my check that he's a dispensational premillennialist. And what they are desperately wanting is to have not just the city of Jerusalem there with Jews living in it, which they do, but the Temple Mount still controlled by Muslims. So Israel at some point has to gain control of the Temple Mount. They have to rebuild Solomon's temple and so on and so forth, because that will lead then to the ability of so that's what he's doing. That's why this has to be the actual heavenly city of Jerusalem being rebuilt. Okay? I would be shocked if that is not the underlying premise of this eschatological view in this commentary. All right? But it's related, because he has to make that hard break, that hard fork between the law of Moses and the gospel in order to fit both the Calvinistic and premillennial views into his writings. He has to. All right, that's outside where I want to go in the topic today, because I am actually trying to get through this section of the text a little bit. Okay. But as you study it, you got to at least think about it. All right. Paul is not talking about the actual geographic location of the city of Jerusalem, nor is he doing that here. We're in the middle of an allegory. Okay? Who is the present Jerusalem? Paul shows up in Jerusalem, the actual physical city of Jerusalem. He comes to Jerusalem. The brothers receive him gladly. On the following day, Paul went in with us to James, and all the elders were present. Okay, so this is one of the us passages, which means Luke is with them. James, we've talked about James a lot. I may have to apologize to James when we get to heaven together, because I say some things about James, but have mercy. He keeps popping up in places that he was proud to be a Jew. Let me just say it that way. James was proud to be a Jew. But so were all the other elders in the church at Jerusalem. They talked for a little while. He related one by one the things that God had done among the Gentiles through his ministry. Like in Galatia. When they heard it, they glorified God and said to him, they glorified God. Okay, give him credit there. Yay. But then the next thing Luke includes is, and they said to him, You see, brother, how many thousands there are among the Jews of those who have believed. So we got Christians here. Okay? That's a Christian. Just like those Pharisees back in Acts 15. Thousands of them. They're all over the place. They are all zealous for the law. I wonder if they might be included in that party that Paul is writing to in Galatians 4 when he says, you who rely on the works of the law. I wonder if he might be talking to that same group of people in Galatians 4 when he says to them, you who desire to be under the law. I know he is, because look what James then says, or the elders in James say. They have been told about you that you teach all the Jews who were among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, telling them not to circumcise their children or walk according to our customs. You want to know what the present Jerusalem is? See, Paul ain't talking here. When he's talking about these two covenants, Paul is not talking here about the Old Testament law followed as God intended it. Because if they had done that, Jesus was pretty clear. Search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life, but they are they which testify of me. What's that, John 5:31, 32, somewhere around in there, I think. It's John 5, almost positive there. Yeah, they were supposed to be searching the scriptures. That would be the Old Testament, because when he said that, no New Testament word had been written yet. Jesus was still alive. No New Testament book had been written. The only scriptures were the Old Testament. They are they which testify of me. See, if they'd been following the present Jerusalem, would now all be Christians, which thousands of them were. Many thousands are believers. They're Christians. Here's the problem. They are all still zealous for the law. You see, that they are that party. They are the ones who want to be under the law, to the point that they say to Paul, you can't be just teaching your stuff out there among the Gentiles. You got to make sure that the Jews continue to circumcise and to walk according to our customs. You know, our customs, the traditions of the elders, the other traditions, the traditions of the elders that have become so important that they have replaced the doctrine, replaced the commandments of God. They are now the commandments of men that we follow. You hold to the traditions of men to the point that you leave behind the laws of God. You want to, in order to do all these things, to establish your tradition, your customs. Who is it that's doing this? Oh, Pharisees were doing this. This is Pharisee. This is the way Pharisee did the law. Wait a minute. Here, we got James and the elders wanting to make sure that everybody still circumcises their children and to walk according to those customs. Where did that doctrine come from in the church? Well, in the church, that doctrine came from the circumcision party, Acts 10, but that circumcision party had its origin, lo and behold, in the Pharisees. This present Jerusalem is in slavery with her children. The present Jerusalem is those who desire to be under the law. It's right there in the text. That's the path. What is it? It's the present Jerusalem is according to the flesh. That's the path. And it leads to slavery. Not just for the present Jerusalem, which would be by origin, at least in the New Testament context, by origin the Pharisees. What were the Pharisees known for doing? Well, the Pharisees were known for doing something that Jesus points out pretty clearly about them back over here in Matthew chapter 23. He says, you sit on Moses' seat, you tie up heavy burdens, and you lay them on people's shoulders. And then it says, what you will do is, well, frankly, you will shut the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. How are they shutting up the kingdom of heaven? Well, they were creating so many rules and regulations that people thought they were wretched. And you will travel across sea and land to make one proselyte. But when you do, you make him twice as much a child of hell as yourselves. You see, the present Jerusalem is in slavery because it's carrying around heavy burdens that are just too hard to bear. And is being taught that by the present Jerusalem. And guess what happens? When you become a proselyte of the present Jerusalem, guess what you end up being? A child of hell. Because the children of the present Jerusalem are in slavery. Don't make this hard, people. Bible's not trying to trick you. It's trying to explain itself to you. This is a simple, simple doctrine. Just leave it all in the first century. Okay? Arlene's got 1 Peter 2:9. Was that the verse I was thinking of? That sounds, I mean, that's what that verse says. That's not the verse I was, is it? The royal priesthood. Exodus 19 says, thank you, Arlene. But it's there it is. Now therefore, this is Exodus 19. Now therefore, this is verse 5. If you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, do right, you shall be my treasured possession among all peoples. For all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Okay, the point I was making is that's not slavery. That's not slavery. That is not, hey, I'm about to make you slaves again. No, that is not. All right, that's the point I was making. Thank you, Arlene. You got me at least on the right path. Because that effectively, 1 Peter 2:9 is essentially a quotation of Exodus 19. But I knew the passage I wanted was somewhere in the Old Testament. I just couldn't get it in my brain where it was. I was trying to put it in one of the prophets. I did not have it in my brain in Exodus. I had it I was in one of the major prophets. I was thinking either Isaiah or Jeremiah. But I knew those couldn't be right. I just didn't know where it was. Thank you, though. Exodus 19 was the verse I wanted. All right. Now, back to this. All right, we're back here in Galatians 4. So that's the present Jerusalem. In this context, Paul is again not talking geographically about the physical city of Jerusalem. It is talking about the prevailing doctrine that is in Jerusalem, especially the prevailing doctrine that is in Jerusalem among the believers, like James and the elders. Okay? I mean, back in chapter 2, he even calls them out. I mean, he says, where is it in chapter 2? Chapter 2, these false brethren have come in so that they might bring us into slavery. These false brethren. They secretly came in trying to do that. Okay? And when it turns around that Peter is in the church at Antioch, Cephas or Peter is at Antioch, certain men were come from James. That's one of my James passages where I may have to apologize to my brother in Christ. Because I got questions about you, James. What you doing, man? But he stopped eating, Peter did, stopped eating with the Pharisees, or with the Gentiles rather, when they showed up because he feared the circumcision party. Acts 10. Acts 11. Acts 11 is where they show up. Acts 11:4. The first time they're mentioned in the book of Acts. And at that point, Peter opposed them. At this point, he does not. Slavery. That, do not change topics. I'm glad I came back here to chapter 2. It is do you want to know who the present Jerusalem is? It's right there. It's Acts 21. It's Acts 15. It's Galatians 2. Frankly, it goes back to Acts 11. That is the present Jerusalem. The problem is, it's not just, it is the present Jerusalem is in the church, but let me help you here. Okay? Some believers who belonged to the party of the Pharisees rose up and said, okay, belonged to does not mean like past tense, they gave it up. No, 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 no. They belonged to the party of the Pharisees. Guess what? They still were. See, the Pharisees who were not in the church were teaching according to the flesh. The Pharisees who ended up in the church, guess what? They were teaching according to the flesh as well. Both camps, both parties lead you to slavery, because whenever you sow to the flesh, you reap corruption from it. Same thing over and over and over and over again. All right, there it is. Now let's deal with the second one. But the Jerusalem above is free. Now I'm going to bring this up right here. Jerusalem above is free. Okay? Do something I do every now and again. I'm going to bring it up. Okay? There's according to the flesh. Here's our interlinear. Okay? I want to show it to you right here. Verse 26. Where did verse 26 go? There it is. Okay? Right here. S10, if you want to say it. Okay? It's properly translated there. Is. Okay? It is a verb. That's the V. P here stands for present, active, indicative. All right? Third person singular. Present, active, indicative. Present, active, indicative is just that. It's a present tense verb. Active, indicative. That's two ways. When I was studying Greek in school, the first time I ever heard somebody introduce, I think it was Keith Mosier did it, the present active indicative in Greek, he talked about hand clapping. And he said the way to understand it is it is a continual thing, like you continue to clap your hands, or you clap your hands hard enough, and we do that hard enough, sorry about right from the microphone, sorry about that, but the sting continues on down. You can still feel it. He said that's not perfect, but that's a pretty good understanding of the present active indicative. It is either a continual action or it is an action which has continual impact. Okay? It's not punctiliar, it's continual. Okay? Why do I bring that up? Let me turn that off now. But that's what this is right there is. Present. Not aorist, not future. Present. Okay? And it's an active indicative. So this is an ongoing thing. All right? So let's bring that back up. I'm in chapter 5 now. I need to get back to chapter 4. There it is. The Jerusalem that the Jerusalem above is free. I want you to notice something right here. Back to our commentary set for verse 26. Sarah, on the other hand, corresponded to Jerusalem, the Jerusalem that is above, the mother of all the children of grace. This heavenly city, which one day will come down to earth, is now the city of the living God, the home of departed believers of all ages. Okay? You notice what he just did there? This heavenly city is now, because he has to get it in the present tense. So it does exist. It does exist. The problem is he can't have it on earth yet. Do you know why he can't have it on earth yet? This heavenly city, the Jerusalem that is above, because that would make it the new Jerusalem. That's the passage he quotes right here. Revelation 21 verse 2. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. Okay? This heavenly city cannot yet exist on earth because it's the new Jerusalem, it's the new heaven and the new earth. There's another word for it. Kingdom. Okay, I'm not going to do it right now, but there's no way this is not dispensational premillennialism. And if that's what's being written here, and I can't get my mind wrapped around any other doctrine it could be. If that's what's being written right here, he can't have the kingdom on earth yet. So notice what he does. The heavenly city is still in heaven because the millennial reign hasn't begun yet. It doesn't begin until you get to the conclusion of Revelation 20 on into Revelation 21. Okay. Is now, that's the present tense. That's why I went through, that's a present active indicative. He has to say it exists. Is now the city of the living God. Interesting, he goes to Hebrews 12 on that. Okay. In fact, let me try to remember to do that here in just a second. He goes to Hebrews 12 there. Let me pull that verse up. You have come to Mount Zion, to the city of the living God. Not Mount Sinai, but Mount Zion, the city of the living God. The heavenly Jerusalem. That's what you've come to. But it's not here yet. It is now the home of the departed believers of all ages. I would, if he were here, if this commentator were here, his name is Donald Campbell, if I remember correctly. If he were right here, I'd have to ask him a question or two. Because the way you wrote that sure sounds to me like what I think you just did. If you have passed on from this world, you are in the heavenly Jerusalem. You are in the home of the departed. But what if I haven't? See, there'd be my question. I'm not dead yet. I'm right here. Where am I? What am I in? Am I part of this heavenly city or not? Because one day it will come down to earth, but it hasn't yet. So what am I in? Okay, this is why I want to go to Hebrews 12. Because in Hebrews 12, can y'all see that? Let me bring that down here a little bit. In Hebrews 12, he quotes verse 22. But you have come to Mount Zion, to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem. So it's the heavenly Jerusalem. Okay, great. That's what I've come to. But apparently I'm not in it. Because I'm not departed yet. It's not my home yet. Because it's in heaven and I'm not. Which then when you get Revelation 21 verse, is that 2 Revelation 21 verse 2, the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. The Jerusalem that is above, if that's the heavenly Jerusalem, if that's the city of the living God, it is the new heaven and the new earth. It is the new Jerusalem. It is all of those things. And it is a bride adorned for her husband. What's that? What is the bride adorned for the husband? Well, what is that? Better not be the church, because then you got a problem. Because that would be the Jerusalem that is above is actually on the earth because the church is already here. That would mean the new heaven and the new earth, the new Jerusalem is already here because that would be the church. See, typically what they would do is go to Romans 8 and they would try to separate that from the glorification of the saints mentioned in Romans 8, which doesn't happen until after the millennial reign. Okay? Let's go to Hebrews 12 again. This is Hebrews 12:22. That's what he quotes. Okay? Keep reading. Let's just go ahead and click over there. But you have come to the Mount Zion, the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, to an innumerable angels in festal gathering, to the assembly of the firstborn who are enrolled in heaven, and to God, the judge of all the spirits, and so on and so forth, mediator of a new covenant. See to it that you do not refuse him who was speaking, for if they did not escape him when they refused to whom he warned them on the earth, much less shall we escape him when we reject him who warns from heaven. Keep going. At the time his voice shook the earth, but now, here's a now statement, he has promised, yet once more I will shake not only the earth, but also the heavens. This phrase, yet once more, signifies the removal of things that are shaken, that is, the things that have been made, in order that those things that cannot be shaken may remain. Okay, great. Let us therefore be grateful. Therefore, let us be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken. Okay, here we go again. Bring our interlinear back up. Let's get to verse 28 in our interlinear. Let us there be grateful for receiving. Okay, Harlambano is the word you're looking for there, but let's get it. Okay, it is a present. It's a verb. Well, it's a verb. It is a present active participle. It's actually a participle. Okay, and present active participle, present participle in the masculine, but it's a present active participle. Okay. See, the ESV translates it. Let us therefore be grateful for receiving. In English, that sounds like we have already fully received it. Okay. Which is actually even worse for a premillennial view. It should say, for a premillennial view, it should said that therefore let us be grateful for when we will receive the kingdom. Okay, but this is a present active participle. Is it the King James? Might be the King James. Verse 28. No, it's not. We receive in a kingdom which cannot be moved. What is it? Could it be the American Standard? No way it's the NIV. It is the NIV. Wow. I had that in the King James in my brain. It's actually the NIV. Since therefore we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken. I think that's a present active participle. We are receiving a kingdom that cannot be moved. Okay? Hey, Dad's 369. I see all your comments right there. Um, I hate you're going through something like that, but um, if you're in a particular city somewhere in Arkansas, maybe you might tell people what city you're in, because we have enough viewers here that you might be able to find the Lord's church in your city in Arkansas. Not really a big fan of handing out money on an online stream. That just I'm not accusing you of anything, but buddy, that is the internet we live in. There's a lot of trolling and there's a lot of scamming going on anytime you're online. But we have enough viewers here. If you could give us a place somewhere in Arkansas, we might very well be able to get you in contact with somebody that could look you in the eyeball. Okay. And that might be the best way we can help you. Okay. We're willing to help you if we can, but I'm not going to recommend anybody just start handing money out online. That's just not something I do myself very often. I'm a little bit cynical about things that happen online these days. But I am confident there's a congregation, Arkansas, there's Lord's Churches of Christ are all through Arkansas. I'm pretty confident we could find somebody might be able to help you out there. All right. So that's what I would recommend in terms of doing that. Any of our viewers want to handle that differently? Y'all are free will, godly people. Go do what you need to do with it. But appreciate you, David, for checking in with us, though. Anyway, let me get back here to where we are. But my point being here, though, in verse number 28, we are receiving a kingdom, present participle, not future. But now our commentator just said that Mount Zion is the city. It's currently now the city of the living God. But what is it? Well, it's the bride. You see, when you start piecing all these things together, you're going to end up with, here's the bride, here's the city of the living God, here's the kingdom that is being received, and lo and behold, let's just go to Ephesians 5. We could go to Revelation. Let's just go to Ephesians 5. As Paul, I'm still in the NIV. That's going to mess me up. The analogy is very clear. The bride is the church. Okay? The Jerusalem that is above is the church. It's the kingdom. And by the way, it is the new heaven and the new earth. It is the new Jerusalem. It is the heavenly Jerusalem. It's all of those things. And if we were having an eschatological study in its length, we'd be talking about that now. Okay? And yes, the idea that in AD 67, 68, when Hebrews is written, that they were still receiving the kingdom, we actually have talked about that in the weeks gone by. That present participle in Hebrews 12 is really important, because that present participle in Hebrews 12 is tied directly to the split between the glorification of Jesus in Daniel 7 and the glorification of the saints in Daniel 7. There's a gap called the little horn that takes place there. Okay? Now, when, let's go back to Hebrews 12, when he speaks one more time, and he shakes not only the earth but also the heavens, once more indicates the removal of what can be shaken. What can be shaken? We're in the book of, I'll give you a hint, we're in the book of Hebrews. Any idea what could be shaken? How about he was the mediator, Jesus is the mediator of a new covenant. You've come to Mount Zion, not to Mount Sinai again, okay? Not the voice of the one speaking from the mountain and so on. It's almost as if we're having a comparison here between the Old Testament and the New Testament, between the Old Covenant and the New Covenant, between Israel and the church, which, by the way, is the heavenly Jerusalem, which is the kingdom that is being received. What would mark be the marker, the indicator that those things which may be shaken are gone, so that the unshakable thing, the thing that the kingdom of hell, the gates of hell will not prevail against, so that thing will remain? Oh, that would be the church. When's that going to happen? Well, that's going to happen back in, let me go back to the ESV. I'm pulling the NIV up here, and it's going to mess me up sooner or later. Sorry, I got to get the interlinear off again. Back over here to Ephesians 3. That's Hebrews 12 again. Hold on. I got too many tabs open here. There we go. Back to Ephesians 3. Where he is going to be glorified in the church, even into the heavenly places. Ephesians 9 verses 10 and 9. Ephesians 3 rather verses 9 and 10. That in him may be glory in throughout all ages. Again, in the church. It's almost like there's no gap there. It's almost like it's the same thing. And that's going to be done when the mystery of God is revealed that the Gentiles should be fellow heirs, members of the same body, and partakers of the promise in Christ through the gospel. That would take place. If you want a time statement when that will take place, go back to Ephesians chapter 1. You see that all unite, Jew and Gentile, all things together in heaven and on earth. Oh, that'd be the heavenly above Jerusalem. Okay, same topic, strangely. Oh, and that's going to take place in the fullness of time. Have we talked about fullness of time at all? Strange. We talked about fullness of time, right here in Galatians 4. Galatians 4 and verse 4. Paul didn't lose sight of that when he got down here. What's going on in Galatia? Well, there's a bunch of Pharisaical Jews, works-based guys, who are in there, who are trying to teach people to be circumcised and to keep all the customs, kind of like, what James and the elders were doing to Paul in Acts 21. See, they were trying to still keep this Jewish mentality about this Pharisaical Jewish mentality about the church present. They were effectively trying to, as we say, Judaize the church. And if they're successful of Judaizing the church, guess what it becomes? It becomes the nation of Israel. Instead of there being church buildings, the church would just be meeting in the synagogues, teaching the same doctrine they've been teaching, and Gentiles would have to do the same thing, which is to be proselytized by circumcision into being a Jew. That's what it would have become. And that was still going on in AD 68 when the book of Hebrews was written. Every time you're reading this stuff, please understand, most of the New Testament, especially the writings of Paul, are about Judaizers. That is the dilemma facing the church. The final thing that has to be completed for the fullness of time to happen is that the Judaizers have to be put down. That's what it's about. So in the church, the present Jerusalem, you Judaizers, you're just bringing slavery, because that's what you tried to do back up in chapter 2 of this book. You tried to put us back into slavery. That's what he's going to tell them here in chapter 5. Do not submit to them. The Jerusalem that is above, better covenant, better promises, the heavenly Jerusalem. Not according to the flesh, but according to spirit. See, that's free. Because when you sow to the Spirit, you will from the Spirit reap eternal life. It's the law of the Spirit of life in Romans. It's free. And she is our mother. Not you guys, the church that Jesus built. That's our mother. For it is written, rejoice, O barren, the one who does not bear. Break forth and cry aloud, you who are not in labor, for the children of the desolate will be more than those who has a husband. Okay? Basically, what he's just telling the Judaizers is, there's your reference, Isaiah 54. Okay? Basically, what he just told the Judaizers is, give up. Y'all are going to lose this. Even your law, the one that you desire to be under, it prophesied of these coming days. You're going to lose. You're done. Time's up. Oh, hold on. I said time's up because I was teaching something. I got to check my phone because Julie texted me. Hold on. Oh, yep. 8 minutes ago, she checked out of the doctor's appointment. I got to wrap this up pretty quick. I need to go. I got to take care of stuff. All right. But I think I can pretty well wrap it up. I at least want to get to a conclusion point before the end of this class, because we're going to be, like I said, just FYI for those who are still here, heading to polishing the pulpit. I am. So no class Thursday, and certainly no class Tuesday, next Tuesday. Next Thursday, I still don't know what time I'm going to be getting back from polishing. So hit and miss on next Thursday. We'll see it. All right. But let me wrap it up here. And when we get back to it, because I can't start chapter 5 without at least rehearsing some of this in chapter 4. Okay. But let me wrap this up, because this is the conclusion paragraph of everything we've been talking about. He says, and now you brothers, like Isaac, are children of promise. All right. Now, you who desire to be under the law, that is a shot right at, I said about, it's not a shot across the bow. It is a shot right into the waterline of Judaistic theology. This whole section, concluding with Isaiah 54, I didn't talk about that long, but that is significant, absolutely significant there, because he just told them the law said the children of the desolate are going to beat y'all out. There would be more of the Gentiles than there are of you, which has happened. Okay? So I think, however, verse 28, now brothers like Isaac are children of promise. So don't be under the law. You're a child of promise. But just as that time, he who was born according to the flesh, not depravity, but according to Sarah telling Abraham, help God out here and take Hagar. he persecuted him who was born according to the Spirit. Okay. The reference there is, let me pull it up for you there. That should be, can you see it? Genesis 21:9. I'm sure you remember the account where that happened. Ends up getting Hagar kicked out, right? So also it is now. So if you have any question about who Ishmael is, who according to the flesh is, who that first covenant is, it's what's going on here. Okay? But what does the scripture say? What does the scripture say? Well, Genesis 21:10. Okay, the event happens in Genesis 21 where Ishmael and Isaac go crossways, and Hagar and Sarah says to Hagar or to Abraham, get her out. Okay, cast out this slave woman. And that's what verse 10 says. For the son of the slave woman shall not inherit with the son of the free woman. So, brothers, we are not children of the slave woman, but of the free woman. I want you to get that right there. Paul just shot them right at the waterline, blowing them up. You don't even listen to your own law. And what the conclusion is, your own law, not only the way you're going about it brings about slavery, but your own law says, quoting Isaiah here, that y'all are a dead tree. The children of the desolate, the one without the husband, those children will be more. Okay? Scripture says about Hagar and about Ishmael, cast them out. They shall not inherit with the son, with the son of the free woman. When's that going to happen? When did that actually happen? Late summer, early fall, I believe it was, of AD 70. That's when it happened. If there were any doubt left, because the church that had thousands, many thousands who were still zealous of the law, that James and the elders of that church were trying to get Paul to acquiesce to them, what happened to that church in and around AD 70? The mothership, if you will, of Judaistic theology, what happened to it? Well, it was cast out. It ceased to exist. That's what's about to happen. So, brothers, don't follow the slave woman. Follow the free woman. That's where you go. So therefore, for freedom Christ has set us free. Not from the law of Moses, because that was a kingdom of priests, a royal holy nation. Set us free from the yoke of slavery. Where'd that yoke of slavery come from? That yoke of slavery came from the elementary principles of the world. We were enslaved, not to the law. We were enslaved while under the law, yes, Galatians 3. But what were we enslaved to? We were enslaved to the elementary principles of the world, to live according to the flesh. Flesh and spirit, works and faith, freedom and slavery. That's where we started the class today. They're all the same thing. Cause, or choice, cause, what are you going to call it? Do you live according to the flesh? You live according to the spirit. Your worldview, your paradigm, faith or works, your result, freedom or slavery. That middle one, faith or works, is based upon your view of the elementary principle of the world. It is Romans 6, based upon your human nature and your limit, your human terms rather, and your natural limitations. Because when you live that way, you're relying on those things that we talked about. Point being, there is no overlap here. According to the flesh, according to the spirit, faith and works, there is no overlap. Every single time, one leads to slavery The other leads to freedom. He does not change topics when you get down here into chapter 6. If you live by the flesh, you reap slavery, corruption, bondage. If you live by the Spirit, you get life, eternal life. There's no overlap. These are mutually exclusive points. Now, within the context of what's being written here, there's coming a point in time when that slave woman and her sons, they are cast out, and they will not inherit with us. Can I take you to another text? What we are waiting for is where'd my verse go? We are eagerly waiting for adoption as sons, the redemption of our body, singular. Bodies in the ESV, it is singular in the Greek. What is that? Well, that will be the point when the revealing of the sons of God happens. You know, if I could make a parallel, maybe a little bit of my own allegory here. Abraham had 2 sons, right? Ishmael and Isaac. And they hung out for a while, Ishmael being older. And maybe there were some servants looking around who didn't really know who the proper heir of Abraham was. How did they finally get to the clue? Well, one day Abraham told Hagar, get out of here. And Hagar and Ishmael left. Bye-bye. Now, from that point forward, everybody knew. Everybody knew exactly who the heir of Abraham was. It was Isaac. Sarah didn't have to worry about it anymore. None of the servants would be confused. Ishmael gone. Isaac. When did that happen? Because right now, you see there's an argument going on about who are the true children of God. Because that's what James and the elders and said to Paul is, listen, you're telling people they don't have to keep the law of Moses and our customs. See, there's an argument going on about who are actually the true children of God. That is not the end of the world when the true sons of God are revealed. If you don't know whether or not you're a child of God, a son or a daughter of God right now, if you don't know that, pick up your Bible and read it. Okay? You should already know that. The answer of a good conscience toward God should already be yours, 1 Peter 3:21. But you see, when Paul was writing, you didn't know that. Because there was always a voice telling, no, you need to keep our customs. Until about AD 70 when it stopped forever. It's funny how all these texts just kind of talk about the same stuff over and over and over again. Anyway, that's where we are. That gets us kind of down to the end of chapter 4. Anyway, enjoy being with you today. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this thing up. Yep, I'm stopping early. I actually covered what I wanted to cover, and I'm wrapping up early. How about that? Amazing what happens when I stay on topic. Actually stay on topic. We actually get stuff covered. Ta-da! So, anyway, I will be seeing y'all hopefully week and a half. It might be 2 weeks. If I don't get back in time from polishing, and I'm leaning on the side that I won't be back here for Thursday, because that's the 22nd, right? I think that's August 22nd. My anniversary is August 23rd. So I'm thinking we're on a trip and we're coming back a day before. I'm thinking probably not here for class on Thursday. I'm thinking there might be an extra day wrapped into that trip somehow, or we just don't make it back on time. That's kind of what I'm thinking. But we haven't actually settled that yet, so it's at least possible. I could be back. If not, though, if not, then I'll see you. Let me pull up a calendar here real quick. Yeah, it may be August 26th before we're back together. So possibly no, wait a minute. I got that wrong. That's 22nd. Oh, that's August. The Thursday is the 21st. We'll see. I don't know. Anyway, but probably the 26th. Okay. But if you see a notification pop up that we got a stream coming, it would be no earlier than the 21st, probably the 26th. All right. I'll stop there and just say goodbye to you. I don't know if any of y'all are going to polishing, but if you are, stop in and say hi. We'll see what we got going on there. But yeah, I think that's it. I'm going to wrap it up then. Has been good to be with you today. I hope you all found something useful in this class today. And Lord willing, I'll see you back here in a couple weeks. Until then, as always, it's my prayer that you will go out and make your day a great one for God.